guys, it's Ed from LUCIDPIXUL, and I am super excited because in front of me here I have several iPad artist accessories from the company Astropad. They sent me all this stuff, but of course my opinions are completely dishonest and biased because I like free stuff. No, of course not. I'm going to be honest, and I'm even going to offer you some comparisons so you can make a more informed decision depending on your particular use case. But not all of these products have competition because Astropad have done some pretty exciting innovation in their own regard. So what we're going to be looking at today are the compact easel, the magnetic screen protector, the Darkboard, and the Astropad Studio. I also, by the way, have the Luna display over here. I'm going to share my opinions about it, but I haven't actually tested it because in my particular use case, I wouldn't use a product like that. Namely, I'm working on a Mac, and the way I work, I normally wouldn't use something like this, but I'll definitely let you know what this is good for. And I'll recommend you to other YouTubers who have tested this out with their own equipment because they are equipped to be able to test out and get the most, show you what the best value is for that particular product. But it's a pretty awesome product as well. So we're going to start with the compact Astropad Compact Easel, which I incidentally reviewed just last week and compared it to a bunch of different iPad stands from both desktop to standing and magnetic, which you can check out right over here, from the perspective of a general consumer, but also from an artistic perspective. And if you've seen that, you already have an indication, a bit of a teaser on how I feel about this. This ranked as one of my two favorite compact and budget options. It's the least expensive of all the iPad stands that I reviewed, but that did not come at the cost of build quality or functionality. It's a fully adjustable, made of nice metal, robust, dampened materials. You really feel the solid metal construction of it. It's got these two nice spring-loaded 1 centimeter increment adjustment legs that you can adjust in the back. It's nice and stable. It's made for drawing, so you can press and put a good amount of pressure on it. You should have no issues with it sliding or moving or wobbling when you're drawing, which is very important for artists. The other fact about this is that it's so compact. It folds up into this tiny little thing. It fits into this tiny little velvet sleeve, which is both elegant but very, very convenient. So if you have a laptop and your iPad, or you just have your iPad and you want to go sit down at a cafe, this is the first one that I'd recommend because it's just it's so unintrusive. If you have a larger iPad stand or you've got a setup that's takes up a little bit more space, it can be a little bit embarrassing. It feels a bit show-offy in a public setting. You're not going to deal with that here at all. Just in terms of this stand itself, in its own functionality for the price, I think that you can't get better for the price, albeit the direct competitor, I would say, to this was a less well-built, in terms of build quality, less portable, yet more adjustable alternative, the Parblo tablet and iPad stand as well, which had a couple of advantages, but a couple of disadvantages. Number one, it's bigger. So taking it and putting it into a case is not as easy. I can't just slip it into the side of my bag as easily as I can with the compact easel from Astropad. And it doesn't have that solid metal, albeit it's made of very good quality plastic. So in terms of build quality, I don't think it was really an issue in comparison. It's a little bit more expensive. This is $29.99 USD for the stand itself. The Parblo was roughly $38 US dollars. So it's a little bit pricier, but not really anything that's going to break the bank. Albeit, the advantage of the Parblo over this one had to do with adjustability. Both in terms of how it adjusts, but also to the degree that it adjusts. My main gripe with this stand was it is a good enough angle for drawing. I found that the angle I couldn't get it perfectly perpendicular to my height, and being taller, I technically wouldn't need a steeper angle to mine because I'm higher up. But I did find it was about 10 to 15 degrees shy of being a perfect angle for drawing. But I've drawn on this for hours and hours and never found any issues with it whatsoever. So it's really not something you're going to notice in day-to-day use. The other thing is you have to technically flip it over and adjust the legs if you really want to nail that angle right off the bat. Otherwise, you're kind of fiddling with it underneath and it's a bit unstable. I would take the iPad off to adjust it. Again, once you've got it to the height that you want, it's a 2-second process. It really is not something to complain about. But with the Parbla one, it adjusts all the way up to a complete vertical, but it's also got a handle so I can literally grip it back here and pull it up. Instead of having to take off the iPad stand, I can adjust it while the iPad's sitting on it. It's a slightly better convenience, but ultimately, it's not really a big game changer. All in all, I think that this is probably the best compact and has the best longevity of all of these different compact stands, and you're paying really peanuts for it, so you really can't get wrong. It's a very good option. After that is the magnetic screen protector. And again, this is specifically for artists, so it has a texture. So when you're drawing on it, you can actually feel the paper texture on it. And I'm going to compare it to two different types of screen protectors. Number one is a couple of other magnetic screen protectors for artists that I've tested out, and the also famous paper-like non-magnetic screen protector, meaning you stick it on, you get one shot to get it right. If it doesn't work, if you do take it off, well, you got to put a new one on. So in that regard, this is actually less expensive than the paper-like. It is very, 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 very budget friendly and very competitive in terms of its pricing compared to a lot of other magnetic screen protectors. And I find that in terms of its performance for a magnetic screen protector, I find that it does an excellent, excellent job. Now, if I compare it to the paper-like, which I've used for years, I've got a paper-like on my iPad mini over here. The first most important thing to me before drawing performance is how it affects colors. The whole reason why I have Apple Studio displays and iPads and iPhones and is because coming from a guy who was on Windows for over 20 years, 20, 30 years, and works on a Cintiq where I have to calibrate my colors all the time, you cannot find better calibrated colors than you can on an Apple display. You just can't. So if screen protector damages colors, forget it. And compared to all the other magnetic screen protectors that I've tried out for the iPad, I wouldn't use the other ones. They were terrible. They were absolutely weren't worth the money you spent on them. It completely ruined the image quality. It was unusable. And that's not the case here at all. I think that if you're just taking it on its own merit compared to other magnetic screen protectors, it does an excellent, excellent job at managing values and colors. It does not distort or create any kind of chromatic aberration or artifacts in the little pixelated dots of the screen protector itself. No issues with that whatsoever. If, however, I compare it to the paper-like, which is a thinner stick-on screen protector, or at least permanent in the sense that I can't take it off and on at my own leisure, the paper-like is slightly better, but I would say by like a 2 to 3% margin. And you'll notice that specifically in the blacks, where I noticed that on the magnetic one, I'm looking at around a 2 to 3% loss of blacks because of the diffusion caused by it. Is it damaging to your perception of values? Not even remotely. But if I'm doing a side-by-side comparison, I definitely notice that the paper-like is ever so slightly better with respecting original colors. And this has a lot to do with the fact that it's thinner and has a thinner texture to it. As far as drawing is concerned, you are going to notice a difference between the two. I find that the screen protector, the Astropad screen protector, has more of a grip to it, and there's a little bit more resistance, which you might actually prefer. And one of the things that Paperlike did with their updated version of their screen protector is they made it thinner and gave it a less aggressive texture. This both helped to create a finer texture that respects the local colors a little bit better, although, like I'm saying, a 1 to 2% difference. It's almost imperceptible. But also creates for a slightly lighter drag to your pen. You might prefer this, you might not. You might find that it's not enough of a change from the default glass screen. I personally find that drawing on the Paperlike is very, very comfortable experience, but I also find that drawing on the Astropad is a very nice drawing experience. And if you're somebody who prefers a little bit more drag for that added control, then I would definitely recommend the Astropad over the Paperlike. I like them both. I definitely like them both. I'd say that the Paperlike has a little bit more of a slightly drier paper feel to it. This has a little bit, you can feel a little bit more of the plastic in it. But again, I've only been using this for a very short period of time, so I haven't given it any long-term reviews as far as its wear and tear is concerned. I've only used it for a couple of weeks. I have very much enjoyed the experience. But there's one more taken for granted advantage of getting a magnetic screen protector if you're on the market for one. And that is, no matter how vigilant, no matter how careful, no matter how much you sterilize your environment and keep your cats out of the room and you dust free everything and you make sure that everything is air sealed, inevitably, you're always going to get that little hair, that little piece of dust that gets under it. And I'm looking at you, you little son of the little hair that gets underneath, and it prevents the screen from fully making contact. You always see it. It's always there, and it'll drive you nuts. Does it affect your drawing experience? Of course not. But it's an eyesore. It's a cringy thing. Where in the case of this, if I see any dust or hair, there's one right under there, I can just lift it off really easily, blow it out, and we're good to go. Look at that. No harm, no foul. So the thing with an Astropad is they do come with a replacement. You do get a not with Astropad, with the Paperlike, you do get a replacement one. But if you mess up, which inevitably I've messed up on at least 15 different iPads, you're going to inevitably have to stare at that stupid hair that you tried to avoid. And I tried so hard not to. If I pull this off, I have to throw it in the garbage. It's unusable. You have to put a new one on, and that can come at a cost. So can I recommend it? Absolutely. If you like a finer or thicker texture, I'll let you decide for yourself. And also, if you're somebody who likes to remove, take on, and put off your screen protector and get access to the purest, best fidelity colors and values off the raw screen of the iPad, then I would recommend getting the magnetic one instead. After that, we have the Darkboard. The Darkboard is essentially made of a very high quality plastic. I know it's a very robust but very light plastic, and it's got some nice grips in the back. So if I get the angle right without blocking my microphone, you can see it's got these grips. So as you're holding them, you've got this nice grip hold onto it. It's not smooth at all. And being very light and having a nice solid connection, you stick your iPad in here, it allows you to walk around with it and draw on your lap, stand up and draw with it, to offer you more comfortable, more ergonomic, more stable drawing experience. I honestly thought when I first got this, I thought it was a little bit gimmicky. I was like, I feel perfectly comfortable drawing on my lap, just a flat iPad, just a raw iPad just sitting on my lap. But when drawing with this, I did notice a little bit more stability and confidence. Plus, the fact that you've got this added rest here, that's actually more for the arm. It gives your arm a little bit more stability. It's kind of like drawing on my Cintiq that has the nice big bezel on it like that. You rely on that bezel to be able to draw up to the edge of your iPad, right? You're not drawing off the iPad so you don't lose that stability. You just slide it in. This one, you have to get the one that's the right size. This is the 12.9 inch 2022, the M2iPad Pro with Apple Pencil Hover, my favorite feature. You can check out my review of it over here. Okay, you can see how it clips in nice and solid, and I have no fears whatsoever walking around, swinging around. What's nice about this is when you're walking around with the iPad in your hand, you, oh, my screen protector's sliding enough. I have to readjust that. Just had to move it. It fits perfectly with the screen protector. When I'm walking around with it, I'm always paranoid that I'm walking around with this, it's like an oversized, smooth iPhone in my hand. And I'm paranoid of dropping it. I'm much more paranoid of dropping this over dropping my iPhone. Where did I find that this was actually really, really nice? Number one, I find it's much easier to carry your iPad around, just drop it down. I have got a nice finger hold to hold on to it. I found that it actually almost makes the iPad feel lighter because of that added grip, where I actually feel that this is a very enjoyable experience isn't only when sitting down, but also when standing up. Because when you're standing up with it, let's say if you're doing life drawing, if you're outdoors, you're drawing outdoors, it's got a grip here as well. So it's got one on the sides like this, and it's got one on the top. So just leaning it against your body and drawing like this is a very comfortable experience. And if you have an Apple Pencil and you want to walk around with it, that Apple Pencil slips ever so perfectly into this space like that. So you have to push it into the space. It's ever so perfectly cut to fit. I have my favorite pen grip for the iPad. This is the one by Paperlike. The thing I like about the Paperlike one is that it actually has a flat surface, so I can magnetize it and I can charge it without having to take the grip off. So I really recommend it. Not sponsored. They're not sponsored here. If you use another grip, then it's thick all the way around. So you have to take the grip off and inevitably lose it. Like I've lost about 10 of these things when you have to charge your pen. With this one, you don't have to. If I have this grip on, it won't fit because that cut is literally fit for just for the flat pencil without any grip on it. So it's just something to take into account. The other thing too, is that when you're taking it out, just be conscious that you can accidentally grip the plastic part inside as well. And I've almost yanked on it too hard, like it feels like I almost could have ripped it or something like that. I knew better. I realized what I was doing, but just something to take into account. When you're drawing, if I draw without it, I inevitably have to hold it like this. And you're going to notice that your fingers, this hand gripping it starts to get tired when you're drawing. It's not comfortable. It doesn't make sense to draw like this. It's too small and it's leaning right up against my body. So that's not very ergonomic. That's where you see something like this coming in really, really handy. And that applies to when you're sitting as well. If you're sitting on your lap, you can have it at the end of your knee, but I always find it's more comfortable to have it against your body if I have that extra grip. There you go. Personally, I love this product. Now, who is it not for? Well, if you're the type of person who just occasionally likes to grab your iPad and sit down on your lap and draw, then, it's not something you do all the time. I don't think it would be worth it for you. It's not worth that extra expense. If you're somebody that travels, you're on your feet a lot, you're outdoors, you like to do plein air painting digitally, you're in you're doing life drawing class and you're at school and you want to be able to stand up and move around the model and draw, that's something that I could find a lot of use for. But if you're sitting at home, more often than not, you're probably going to be either sitting at your desk or you're going to be doing something a little bit less mobile. So in that particular case, might not be the greatest. Good Lord, Gimli. Yeah, he's on a rampage. He's tearing my house to pieces. Now, I want to make a mention to the Luna display. And you'll notice that it's still, if you look at the reflection, you can see it's still sitting in its package. Essentially what this is a USB-C dongle. It's a very simple little dongle that clips into the side of your iPad. And it allows you to use your iPad hands-free without connecting to it, okay? Without having to tether it to a computer or a laptop. You can just connect remotely. Essentially the same thing as universal control in that regard, right? Where universal control, I can just move my mouse from one thing to the other. I recommend checking out the review of Brad Colbo, which I'll link in the description below because he does reviews for Art Tech all the time. He's kind of the go-to guy for that kind of stuff. And he also has a lot of PCs, a lot of Windows-based computers, which I don't have anymore. I don't use Windows anymore. I'm purely on a Mac. So I would much better recommend him. He's got more experience with this kind of stuff, and he can show you the Windows and Mac experience with it. So it's definitely something to check out if this is something you find interesting. In my particular case, I don't think I'm enough of an authority to be able to properly review that product. Do take into account, however, if you are using it, you are using up your USB port, your Thunderbolt or your USB port. So take that into account. You won't be able to charge it and use that simultaneously. Now, last but not least is the Astropad Studio software. And that's where I want you to stop and listen, because one of my biggest dreams since I got the M2iPad Pro, since I've used an iPad in the first place, but specifically the M2 with Apple Pencil Hover, being an artist, I very much appreciate Apple Pencil Hover. To me, it was a total game changer. It's the reason why I use my iPad all the time. It's the reason why if you look at all of my YouTube videos, my art talks, at least 50-60% of the time I'm working on my iPad. I unfortunately can't get full access to Photoshop, the desktop version of Photoshop. Being able to connect my iPad reliably to my Mac and be able to use Photoshop on my iPad, basically using it as a pen display, a desktop pen display, is a total game changer for me. That really makes this a fully professional product for me. And that is only available because of Astropad Studio. And you might be thinking to yourself, yeah, but what about Sidecar? What about Universal Control? Well, Universal Control does not convert this into a Mac desktop. That's just an extended display that you're talking about. But when it comes to Sidecar, it's utterly buggy, utterly unreliable. If you want to use your iPad as an extended monitor for Photoshop, for desktop Photoshop on your iPad, it doesn't even stay connected for longer than 5 to 10 seconds. It crashes, it freezes, it's unreliable. But when using Astropad Studio, you basically launch it on your iPad and you launch it on your desktop. So let me do it for you right now. Go in here, launch Astropad, and then I'm going to do the same thing on my desktop. Launch Astropad. You can set the actual screen dimensions. In this particular case, these are iPad screen dimensions, so it's going to use the full real estate of your iPad. If you don't, if you actually do a full screen on your Apple Studio display, you're going to get the black bars and everything's going to scale down a little bit more. And look at that. I've got fully functional Photoshop. Boop. There you go. Open up Photoshop. And now I can draw. I'm going to repair it. There's Photoshop. Open up Photoshop like this. And I can draw right there. And it works 99% of the time perfectly. And the reason I'm saying 99% of the time is because sometimes there are a few little dropped frames. So if you're used to 120 hertz display, which the iPad Pro is, sometimes it can drop down to like 30 to 60 depending on the situation. I notice that I'm connecting wired, not wireless. I always prefer wired connection. It's just more reliable. I'm using it as a desktop extension anyways. But it works almost flawlessly with the exception of the smallest drop frame. But that doesn't affect drawing experience whatsoever. I find it very responsive. I'm drawing really, really fast. It's responding perfectly on time here. I'm just noticing that it's a little bit slower on my Apple Studio display. So if I do a mark, no, that's almost perfect. That's almost zero latency, So, what it may be 5 milliseconds latency if I'm drawing really, really fast. No, that's completely reliable in my opinion. I have, just to push this to its limit, I have tested this out not only just as an extended display, I've tested it out for hours of drawing. I have tested it out while screen recording and running a Zoom call with screen share running. I was basically creating a virtual teaching scenario because I teach art online. And I'm pushing everything. I'm pushing the system. I'm making sure I've got as many different things going on as possible. Do make sure that you don't have too many Bluetooth devices connected because that might cause interference. I personally don't, but just something to keep an eye out for. I've had zero crashes, zero drop frames to the point where it becomes bothersome, zero lag, and I'm running a screen recording in a Zoom call, recording my screen and doing a high-res drawing in Photoshop using Astropad Studio, and it worked bloody perfectly. So to recap, magnetic screen protector. If you're looking for something that's removable, you can clean the dust after the fact. The ever so subtle loss of blacks and a little bit more of a resistant, slightly stronger texture screen protector, then I could absolutely recommend it. If I can make a recommendation, this side up sticker, I recommend making it black instead of white, so it's a little bit less of an eyesore because it doesn't remove that easily. Touch functionality. It does support touch function, but I found that to be very laggy and slow to respond. Just in terms of the inputs, you really have to it's very slow to respond, particularly if you're used to the Apple touchscreen, which is ridiculous. It's the industry standard of touch responsiveness. So I just plug it into my Mac, I click it on, and I work in Photoshop like that, good to go. And in that regard, I can completely recommend it. So to recap, screen protector, a little bit grittier, a little bit more resistant, and ever so slight, and I mean very slight loss of contrast in the blacks compared to the Paperlike. But you're gaining the advantage of it being removable, of it being cleanable, and you can get access to the raw screen if you want to do some really serious color work in that regard without having to worry about a screen protector altogether. You can't do that with the Paperlike. If you remove it, it's gone. Okay? Then comes the Luna display. Go and check out the link in the description below. Check out Brad Colbo. He's the authority on that. He'll definitely be able to do a better job and inform you better in that regard. Darkboard. Very nice and grippy, very confident connection, easy to remove, a space for the Apple Pencil without a grip. Excellent for when you're standing or you're sitting. It pulls it away from your body. I tried it with a keyboard, doesn't work with a keyboard. The keyboard doesn't sit in a comfortable position, but it gives you that extra wrist rest for better stability, standing and sitting. I can definitely highly recommend it. And it's great for walking around and swinging it around. I'm less afraid of dropping it on the ground because it has that added protection. The compact easel, highly recommended it, particularly if you work remotely and you like to take your stuff on the road in the cafe. It fits into a nice little case, very nice and robust. The angle isn't perfect, but apart from that, I completely love the thing. And I didn't mention this before, compared to other stands, because I can set it in a lower... Do you see this little guy? See him sticking his nose like Gimli? Seriously, you can't fit. But the thing I like about this is because it's nice and silver, it matches my Mac accessories, and because I can set it low, I can access my Mac Studio on my Grovemate stand over here, where other ones lift up a little bit higher, so I always have to move my iPad out of the way. So yeah, if you've got a setup like mine, there's an added perk in that regard. Hopefully this wasn't too much information too quickly, but hopefully it helps to inform your purchasing decisions. And of course, thank you very much for joining me, and happy shopping. Take care.